All right, guys. Um, I hope you can hear me. I can see some of the messages. Someone said they play. You thought you were the first person to get here, right? So let's see. What do I have here? I have four people watching. So we'll wait a bit for others to join. But what we are going to do today is basically, go through the development process, from design to implementation on the front end, and also we'll touch a little on the back end. But I think it's mostly about the process and not necessarily the code, right? On this call, I'll try my best to, you know, to explain while I code. But I'll do a lot of explanation before we even start, the coding. I will talk about the best way to build your portfolio projects, or your projects generally, and how you can go about setting up things like your documentation process, so that it will be easier for you, you know um, going forward with that particular project. If you can hear me, drop a message in the chat. If you can hear me, just drop an emoji, or you can drop a message in the chat. All right, so just drop a message in the chat if you can hear me. Welcome, guys. Samuel, Alawi, Precious, welcome. Emmanuel. All right, awesome. Okay. All right. So I'm currently sharing my screen. Let's pause this music. Good. So I'm currently sharing my screen, and I hope you can see my screen clearly. Let's take off this banner. Yeah. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen clearly. What we are going to be doing is, of course, we're going to build a very simple, I call it a demo project. I don't have a specific name, though I wanted to, make sure I work on something simple enough that, you will understand the process, and, we don't do anything so complicated to avoid a situation where become exhausted. Okay, so it's not going to be so complex, but it's going to at least follow some processes with when it comes to software development, from the design to the front end implementation down to the back end implementation. And I don't think we'll have enough time to actually cover deployment, though we have 2 days, right? And we just have an hour per day. So I hope we're able to cover enough. Right. So yeah, let me zoom in on this, because this is exactly what I'm going to be using for basically explanation. Now that we're starting out, so my demo project is probably going to. So when you are working on a project, at least there should be some sort of brief, right? You should have some sort of brief, given to you by the client, or given to you by your company. There should be a guideline to tell you that this is what we want you to do. And if you're working on a personal project, then you should know that this is what I want to do, right? So when you already have that, brief at hand, I think you can. Okay, so I can see. Oh yeah, all right. Let me see. I can't see your screen. For real, you can't see my screen. Oh, okay, okay. All right. So we should be able to have a brief. We should be able to have a brief at hand. At least if I say, you know, we want a solution to collect, or that we can, okay, we want a solution that can be used to collect feedback from customers across multiple brands. Okay, so I just threw in this this across multiple brands to even make it more robust. But ideally, if you say we want a solution that can be used to collect feedback from customers, of course this sounds more like a feedback kind of thing, right? The first thing that might come to your head is, okay, a feedback form. But one major advice I always tell people: don't assume, right? You are an engineer or you are a designer, you are a product builder. Don't just make assumptions. And this is where I'll be speaking to the folks in the UI UX track or product management track. So whether you work as a product manager, a UI UX designer, which means you do research. If when I say UI UX, I'm not referring to just UI, right? The user experience, research angle of things. Or for someone like myself, right, working as a solutions architect, I know that research, we call that requirement gathering. But I mean, this can take so many forms. So if you are in design, you probably want to call this, user research. You say you are conducting, user research. Of course, this is UX, right? Where you begin to organize, customer interviews, right? So yeah. So for developers, do what we call requirement gathering. Conduct user, you conduct user research and through customer interviews or maybe questionnaires, because you want to ask, right? You want to ask some questions. You definitely have some questions. Someone is saying, okay, what tool is this? This is just a text editor. This is just a text editor. It's not a special tool. You can use Notepad. It's just this is called TextMate. It's just a text editor I love using because it's fast. But I would mention some of the tools that you can use depending on your your specific specialization or domain, right? One of the major tool I can recommend is Notion. I use Notion a lot. I love Notion. You can share your I think Notion Whimsical. Yeah, you can share your page or your findings. So I think it's spelled Whimsical. Whimsical. Right. I also recommend Miro, and I recommend Miro mostly to those guys doing UX. It has a lot of templates you can utilize, right? And I have a masterclass coming up soon where I'll be teaching Miro. But I also have three. I think there are some videos on YouTube, about three or four. I have like long videos on YouTube. I explain Miro, everything about Miro. Basically, when I mean everything, I'm talking about like end to end, right? Looking at the version that I explained that I used in teaching back then. Things might have changed, but I think this was last year, so it should be fairly up to date. So you can check it out, Miro. We have a complete video teaching how to use Notion. That was from Samuel, right? So yeah, you can check it out. I recommend this one, especially when you're doing user research, because it has a lot of templates you can use, right? From user journey map and a bunch of other things. We'll get to talk about that later. So these are some tools. Let me just say tools. Tools you can use. I will share this with you when I'm done. I'll put this on Notion and share with us when I am done. So these are some possible tools you can use. So I said as a developer, and as a designer. All right. So as a designer, this is probably what you want to do first, right? So your first step is to conduct the user research, customer interviews, or share some questionnaires. You want to ask some questions. Now, I want us to really, communicate using the chat. I want you to, tell me what are some questions you think you can ask. Imagine someone asks you this question. Someone is telling you, okay, this is what I want. We want a solution that can be used to collect feedback from customers across multiple brands, right? What are some of the questions you can think of right now, right? Whether you're an engineer or designer or product manager, feel free to, drop your, drop your ideas in the chat, because I don't have any solution already. We're building this from scratch, and we need to, move very fast. Okay. So tell me, what are some of the questions you might want to ask as a designer? Back again, this is the prompt. Let me move this so that we can Yeah, let's keep this here. Okay, so I think we can see everything from here. So let me just say this is step one. Okay, so what are some of the questions that you might want to ask? I'm looking at the chat. I can't see any response yet. What are some of the questions you might have if someone is saying, we want to do this, and we want a situation where Coca-Cola can use this to collect feedback, right? We want a situation where Microsoft can use the same app to collect feedback, or maybe some other brand, Top Universe, right? Flutterwave. So we just want, okay, so I think Onyinye is saying I should take the question again. Right. You are given a brief, right? You're a designer or a developer. You're given a brief, right? This is a project. We call this the project brief. We want a solution that can be used to collect feedback from customers. Now, we are not saying it's not a specific brand saying they want a unique solution for themselves. Now, we want you to build or to design a solution that can be used to collect feedback from customers. But now they are telling us that it's going to be a solution that can be used across multiple brands, which means we can have Top Universe use the same solution to collect feedback, right? For Top Universe's customers, we can have Beta Copper use the same solution to collect feedback for Beta Copper's customers, right? So that's the point. Now, what are some of the questions that you might want to ask the client or the person asking for this solution at that moment, as a designer or as a developer? Feel free to drop the questions, right? And we would talk about them. We just have like 10 minutes to do that. So drop some questions so that we can quickly jump into implementation. But when you're conducting user research, you need to take some time. You need to organize customer interviews. I don't know if you were in the previous session I had with Amaka, we actually did a demo customer interview session. So you can also come up with questionnaires. I'm sure Amaka shared some of the questions with you. You can also use those questions for your questionnaires. There are some best practices when it comes to creating questionnaires. We'll get to touch that in the future. Um, yeah, and of course, as developers, you don't want to start coding immediately. You want to understand. The system in the first place. Ideally, what most developers do in an organization, where you're working in a company setting, you probably want to wait for the designers, which is the UX guys, right, to tell you how the system should work from their end, how they see it, right. Then you, as the engineer, you try to formulate your ideas based on based on the feedback, right, from the UX or the product management team, because those are the people that conduct research, especially if you're working with an early stage company. Yeah. So but in this scenario, I'm just saying, let's assume you want to work on a project and you don't have everyone in the team, right. As a developer, requirement gathering is similar to conducting some of these interviews. The only difference is that this is more of a standard structure. But for requirement gathering, as an engineer who is just starting out, you will not be able to do this as much as what these guys can do. But this would definitely be of help to you, instead of jumping into coding already. Okay. So I can see we have some messages here. Lukman is saying this solution should contain a survey form. Okay, so Lukman, that is an assumption again, right? Now, what I said we should do is, what are the potential questions you will ask the person asking you to build this, right? So, for example, Emmanuel just said, what type of feedback matters most to the individual companies, right? That's a very nice question, right? That's a very, very nice question. So, if we're looking at some of those questions, some of those questions we can ask. The first one you are saying is, what kind of feedback? Emmanuel, if you can also stress more on that when you say what kind of feedback. I think give us some examples if you have some examples. Um, so Dada is saying the brand the user use most. That is not a question. This is an example of a question. What kind of feedback are we collecting, right? And who are the users? Okay. Who are the users? Okay, that's a nice question as well. All right, that's a very good question as well. All right, so how do you feel about the product? How do you feel about the product? Okay, no. Let me come back again. Onyinye. So someone is asking you, you don't have a product yet, right? This is a brief. We want this, right? So let's Onyinye, so I am asking you right now, I'm telling you right now, you are a professional, UI UX person, you're an expert, and I walk up to you and I say, okay, I want a solution that, I have 3 brands, I have 4 brands, but I don't want to have like, different feedback solutions for each brand. I want my customers to be able to give me feedback, right, across multiple brands. So I want a solution that, I can use when I deploy this solution to feedback.com. Customer A from company 1 can come down to this app and drop a feedback, right? Customer B from company, this can come to this same app and drop a feedback. And those companies will get their feedback messages, respectively, right? Company 1 will not see company two feedback. You understand? So I hope that's, made it clearer. Huh? Okay, so let me see again. Who are the users? Okay, yeah, I took that down. How frequently do you want to receive feedback? Um, okay, so how frequently do you want to receive feedback? Okay, so I want to know when you say how frequently do you want to receive feedback, I want to also know your reason for asking that question. That is for Chinemeriam. Yeah, you said how frequently do you want to receive feedback? I think it should be mostly how frequently should the companies, receive the feedback. But I don't think that's the question we should be asking, because the frequency for the feedback is not the core purpose. I mean, you definitely want to receive feedback if you have the form or something open online. That's the point, right? So, but if you're asking this, I believe you have some reasons behind that. So go ahead and let me know. What brands do you often use? Okay, so just take a look at this again, right? Take a look at this again. Um, we are asking the questions based on what we have been asked to do, right? We are not specifically talking to a single user yet, right? This is the problem. And I said, what questions will you ask based on the brief, right? What questions will you ask based on the brief? We will get to the point where you can start talking to a specific user. I think that is what this question, what brands do you often use, would fall in, right? Um, yeah, because you want to ask like follow-up questions, obviously. So, what features would you expect to see in such a type of? Okay. Um, where exactly would you want to get feedback from? Okay, where exactly would you want to get feedback from? Okay, so all right, I think I think I like that. So because you want to be able to ask, maybe you want to be getting this feedback from the mobile app or from a website, right? So that's kind of that's a nice question too. So where exactly do you want to get feedback? Okay. And for some of you that are asking questions that looks like you're asking a specific customer, we'll get to that. Just hold on. All right, so let me see. What brands do you often use? No, we won't be asking that immediately. How frequently do you want to receive feedback? Okay. What features do you expect to see in such type of product? Okay, now that kind of question can actually work for this solution, right? Yeah. So, what features would you expect to see in this type? Come on, stop making silly mistakes. In this type of products, okay. Okay, so I think I'll stop here for now. How will you what? How would you like to get your form? Okay. Do you want to prepare questions, or you want to be able to ask questions yourself? All right. Okay. I love that one. So that's a good question too. From Alawiye. So Alawiye is asking. Let me see if I can copy that. Can I do that from here? Nope. Okay, so Alawiye dropped a message. He said, "How would you like to get your form? Do you want to prepare the questions, or you want to be able to add the questions yourself? Okay, where exactly would you want to get feedback from? Okay, a company wants to get feedback from users. So in the feedback hierarchy, we'll pay attention to what the company wants to get response from the user. Okay, and why the feedback is okay? Why is the feedback important to them? Well, so." Why is the feedback important to them? Now, this question is a tricky one, but I think this question would work well because when you ask this question to, like the person asking you to build this, it's a way to say, okay, you want to understand how important it is so that you would know how best to deliver the feedback to them, right? So this is not a bad question. Okay, so do you want pre-made questions or you want to add it for? Okay, so which social media or method to collect feedback? Okay, and yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Let's stop here for now. Let's stop here for now. So these are some questions you are going to be asking someone that gives you this brief, because you don't want to just jump in and start creating a form. I think one major question I was actually looking at seeing here, which I feel is also similar to this, to say that should be what, right? What kind of feedback, right? And if you're asking what kind of feedback, you want to be able to ask, okay, if a customer is giving us feedback, what kind of message are we looking at, right? Are we taking maybe their first name, are we taking their last name, right? Are we taking like a message? I mean, you agree with me that this can be a feedback, right? Just first name, last name, and message. It's a feedback, right? Is this what you want? You are asking the person with this particular brief, right? We are still working on the brief. Is this what you want, right? Then you look at the next question we have there. Who are the users? So imagine you are told that, okay, our users are actually, customers who purchase, some of our services, right? So customers purchasing, services, right? So that's who you refer to as a user. Okay, so they are customers who purchase, your services or products. So what if you have someone who signed up on your platform but they've not purchased anything? Do you still refer to them as a customer, right? So, or do you refer to them as a user? So this is kind of like, let me say, what kind of feedback? So what kind of feedback? Okay. So I'm going to take off some of these things. I won't keep them. But yeah, what type of feedback? So I said, okay, we're taking first name, last name, message. Do we want to take any kind of attachments? Right? I'm sure you have seen feedback forms where you are also asked to share an attachment if you have one, right? If you have like a file, and when you ask this kind of questions, you are able to dive deep, right? So I'm just going to assume that I'll be answering myself, of course. So I'm asking the customer right now, what kind of feedback, right? He said, okay, when we render our service, at times we just want them to tell us, how they feel, if our service was good and how they can rate our service. So okay, you want them to rate your service now, right? So which means you're also taking rating. So what is the rating like? I'm working with like 1 star, 2 stars, down to 5 stars, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? So we're working with star rating, okay, okay, not bad. So you're working with a star rating. What is the purpose for the star rating? Do you really want the star rating or you just need the message? Which is more important? And they're like, well, we actually need both, right? We want to see their message. Okay, the question now is, do you want, okay, apart from the fact that first name should be a compulsory thing you want to see, right? And this is also a compulsory thing you want to see. um is the message optional, right? I mean, if the star rating is there, do we want one of these items to be optional and one of these items to be compulsory? Is that what we want? You are still interacting with the person with this brief. You are not interacting with a single user yet, right? So let's just continue. But I hope you are getting my point. And if you understand what I'm asking, or if you have any question, drop it in the chat. So, but yeah, so the first name is compulsory, according to the client or the person that needs this solution. The last name is also compulsory. Okay, compulsory, and yeah, compulsory. Okay, and the message. Okay, we'll say the message is optional, right? Let's just assume that is what or let's say the message is actually compulsory as well, but the rating is optional according to the customer, right? Or according to the client that needs the solution. Then now you're asking for the attachment. Okay, so is attachment compulsory or is it optional? And they say, oh, well, it's optional. Of course, everyone should not have an attachment. If you don't ask the customers or the client or the person that gave you this brief, if you don't ask that person this question, do you just want to go ahead to implement a UI or a front end or a back end system that takes this stuff like this? And then the client or the customer would say, oh, no, 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 we don't want attachment. We don't want attachment. We don't have the time to be looking at those attachments or everything, or the message should be optional, right? The rating should be compulsory. You want to ask this question so that you know what you're doing. right, from the get-go. Of course, they can always come back to say, oh, we made a mistake, we no longer need rating, no problem. But you see that you are able to actually um, you have a solid ground to kick off the project. As a matter of fact, I've also seen like a company like Microsoft, they ask for feedback, and they use emojis, right? So they use emojis. They have like three. I think it's like a set of emojis, three, and these emojis have I think it was good, it was bad, it was fair. I don't know if that is let's just assume you have three emojis. You have three characters showing this thing. Okay, so let's say you have good, just like this. Then you have angry. Let's get angry. Okay, then you also have a smile. I think I should have a smile. Okay, so let's assume this is basically what you have, and this is how you want your feedback to look like. Just select one, right? Put some tags under, happy, angry, stuff like that. And when they select this, you can now ask them, do you have an extra message? Make it optional, right? You've collected the feedback. You are capturing their email from somewhere. Maybe you already have their email stored somewhere when they log in, or after allowing them and select one of these options, you can proceed to ask them for their email, right? And then a message that is optional. And I mean, that is what most companies have. I have seen some things like you might have seen some things like this too. And this makes up their feedback, right? Their feedback system. This makes up their feedback system. So some companies are very okay with this, but some companies need attachments. For example, maybe like a media house. So if you ask them what kind of businesses are we looking at here, and they tell you, okay, we have a newspaper, or we have a news website. We have two news websites. We have, two, media houses, kind of like TV channels. And the kind of feedback we want is, people would be able to, give us updates about trends or something happening in their area, and they can attach, a picture or a video, right? You see that this is not going to work. I'm sure you understand this is not going to work. You are capturing a different kind of data there. So that's why it's a very important question. It's a very important thing to ask questions. Okay, so Emmanuel is saying, okay, do they approve any usage any usage word attachment, or it should be censored? Oh, okay, so you want to kind of like have an approval. Well, you call it a feedback, right? A lot of people might send in some messages you don't like, but the idea is, I think it depends on the company though, but at the end of the day, I think that kind of question will be answered by the business, right? By the business team. So if someone uses some kind of word that looks or sounds insulting, um, do you want to see it, right? So for example, if you use a Google Play Store and you're dropping comments about a specific application, I'm sure there are some words that they would have to censor, they would have to block, right? So yeah, I mean, that's a very nice question to Emmanuel. So those are the kind of things you want to do. You want to ask this question. So let's just assume that in our own scenario, we have asked the customer and we're able to get this. We want the message, we want the first name, and we want the last name. I'm just going to stick to these three, right? In our own use case, so that's all we want. But one more thing, and we also want email, right? We want to be able to capture their email, so that is also compulsory. All right. But remember, we said that let's go back to the brief. Let's take this down a little bit. So we said across multiple brands. So that's the question. All right. So do you want us to just have like a single page, where we can use, that specific page to collect all these, to collect these, this data, right? I mean, how do you want to show that this particular feedback is going to this company, or this other feedback is going to this company, or this I mean, how do you really want to show? Do you want to give them a drop down to select the company? Is that a good experience? Do you want to have to stress the customers to select the brand that they want to send there? I mean, is that something you want to do? Can anybody give me an idea? I mean, tell me, what do you think we could do, right? Do you want to give them a drop down experience when it comes to selecting the brand, right? So how do they get to select the brand, right? Now that's not a question you want to be asking the user. I mean, that you are an expert, right? So you should be able to tell us How do we have multiple brands use the same page, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't really feel confusing to the user, right? I mean, we're still asking these guys the same question, but we want to answer this ourselves because we are the experts here, and there are different ways we can actually do this. So imagine if we have. Let me go down to my web to my browser. So this is my browser. All right. So and I hope you can see my screen. So on my browser tab, let's just imagine we have like feedback.com, right? And let's say when you open feedback.com, it's going to give us, that form, right? It's going to give us the email, the field where we can put in the email, the name. It can be first name, last name, or it can be full name, right? I think to even make things easier, we can just go with, the full name. So let's just make that full name, okay? So yeah, I think that. Okay, so I'm going to stick to first name and last name because I want to send them an email when we are done. I want to say, okay, hi, so and so email. We have received your feedback. I don't want to send the full name, right? But some people, so I mean, it's not a bad idea saying hi, Marvelous Solomon, or hi Solomon, or hi Marvelous. I just want to make sure that if some people put in their full name, we are still working with the first name. So let's just keep them separate for now, right? So when we go to feedback.com, we have a single form. But if we want to, specifically send this to a company, right? A single company, a specific company. One of the best things I think we could do is to simply say, if I put something like at Better Copper, right? Feedback.com/Better Copper, right? Or feedback.com/Top Universe, right? Or feedback.com slash both click, right? So when I open this link, I want to be able to, I want to be able to see the same page, right? I don't want the user to feel that, there's any difference on that page. But when they drop that detail, I want that particular feedback to go to this specific company. You get my point? I don't know if is anybody understanding my point at all. Please let me know in the chat if you understand what I'm trying to say. If you're lost, please let me know so that I can explain with a diagram. Um, so Emmanuel is saying every registered company like this should have a pop-up if they are tagged, okay, and every tagged company won't show in the okay, every tagged company won't show on the feed page. So you are saying every registered company should have should pop up if they are tagged. Well. Yeah, I mean that's also cool, but we don't want the users to be searching for a company to give feedback. At least using this example, but that's a good idea. So if you have like a general feedback platform, and you discuss with every company to put in their detail there. Yeah, I think that is not a bad idea. So now you just said for company privacy policy. Okay, so the feedback isn't read by every company. So that is the thing, right? You want to make sure your feedback is going to a specific company. So based on what you're saying right now, MZ, you're saying maybe someone would have to like search for this company, maybe like Top Universe, and then it would show up, right? And when it shows up, you can just click on it before you go ahead to enter your feedback. That is not bad, right? That is not bad. But to make it easier, what if we just say feedback.com/both-click or feedback.com/this, and then when they put in those details and they submit, it's sent to both-click, right? So this is of course easier. Um, yeah, this is of course easier. So which means you're going to have to register the companies in your system as well. But now let's just talk about this part, which is the user interviews. The next thing you want to do is to ask them, okay, now I understand your customers, right? So I want to talk to your customers now, and you then reach out to their customers, maybe one or two customer, and you ask them, if you want to give a feedback to a specific company, how do you want to type the message? I mean, what kind of message do you want to send? Let's assume you buy a product from company A, and something goes wrong with that product, and you want to submit a request or give a feedback, or maybe you're done with that product and you enjoy the product and you want to give a feedback, right? What do you want to send? They will tell you, okay, I mean, I just want to type the message and that is all. I mean, a regular customer will tell you, I just want to type the message and that is all. If you're asking a customer to fill 5 or 6 different fields, you're already giving them enough reason to run away, right? I just want to type those details, and that is all. Okay. So in a more realistic sense, you probably want to have that feedback system, integrated in the service or the platform that those users are already used to. But looking at our example, we're just going to stick to the fact that the customers only want to type in this message, right? So of course you will conduct the interview, right? You will conduct the interview. I think it makes sense. Or you can send in a questionnaire with the appropriate questions and have them answer those questions, right? So that's great. Let's take this off. So now we were able to ask client questions, right? And then I think this is still part of step one, right? Ask client questions. Then we ask customer questions, which is of course interviews and yeah, basically these interviews and of course research. So now we ask the client questions, we ask customer questions. Maybe I should okay. So we have step one. I would say step 1A, right? And maybe step 1B, step, not STEM. Okay, so now we are done with this, right? So we understand our requirement now. The next thing is to kick off development, but we want the designers to first throw in a UI so we can work with that UI. So this is where I'm going to start implementing something. First of all, I'm simply going to navigate to Figma component. We are not going to work on like a landing page or anything. I mean, this is something you're very familiar with. I believe most of you can do this. So what I'm going to do, I can see a nice form here. I'm just going to copy this, this design, and I am simply going to move this into Figma. I have a Figma playlist. I created a course. I think it's on Techies Garage. Created a Figma playlist course, for beginners. If you are not very satisfied with your Figma design skill yet, you can let me know on Discord. Send in a message. I'll tell you how to get access to that playlist. It's not a public one, though we have a lot of public tutorials on Top Universe YouTube channel, so you can check them out. But if you're not very comfortable and you want, if you're not very comfortable with your skills and you want that, playlist, I think it's about 21 or 22 videos, right? So just let me know on Discord, and I will give you directions on how to get the playlist. Okay, so yeah, so we have this, and this is basically what I want. So we can say, okay, when you navigate to that, specific, URL, this is what you see, and then it's going to ask you, okay, put in your first name, right? The first name. So let me duplicate this. So put in your first name, also put in your last name. So let's say EJ Solomon. Okay, first name. Have the last name. Okay, so EJ Solomon. Okay, and your email, right? So we don't need a phone number. I'll say feedback message. Okay, with our product or service. Okay, so and yeah, we don't want to specifically, I mean, we can implement, a way for each company to, specifically point out their services. We can do that, right? So that when you navigate to the company URL feedback.com/topuniverse, it will show this up. It will bring out the services that that company renders, so that you can select, right? If you want to do this, not a big deal. If the company really tells you during the session you have with them that this is what we want, then you can of course go ahead and throw that in as well. So, but for now we have a very simple, feedback form, and we'll just say, let's level up. Okay, um, let's build a better service. Right? I can say we value feedback, or we value our customers. Okay, so value our customers' feedback. Yeah, we value our customers' feedback. Okay, and I can say, okay, you can reach out to us anytime at this. Okay, so every company might have a unique email, right? Every company would have an email, so you can of course click on that email as well. So if I navigate to /Top Universe, I'll probably see beep at topuniverse.org, right? If I navigate to a different website, I'll probably see their own email as well. So I think that makes sense, right? And this is what we have, right? Here is what we have. So we can, of course, make some of these changes here as well. As you can see, I did not design this from scratch, but of course, in your own case, this is something you probably would have to do. So we have the email. What again? We don't need the phone number. Let me take that off, and we have the message. And maybe you just want to drop this message in here, and yeah, we probably don't need this. Now you can also decide to include every company's privacy policy on this implementation, right? All you have to do is to say, okay, when a company is signing up, they would also, throw in their privacy policy URL, and that is also compulsory, right? But I would show you how that will be done. So just hold on a second. So we have we value our customers feedback, okay, and I would drop this down to like 35. Okay, so let's see what's the font size here, 48. Okay, 48. Well, what if we just use, yeah, 35 is fine. 35 line spacing, okay. So also, and this is very important, right? If you're building a product, I always advise people to first, make sure they have a style guide, all right? Have a style guide. This is a demo project, so as you can see, I did not create a style guide. Now, how will you go about creating a style guide? If it's a massive project, that is where we talk about design system. This is not a massive project, all right? But just to give you some, best practices on how to go about, working on Figma, especially when you're collaborating with someone or with a group of people, my advice is that, name things properly, right? I think I will start from there. So let me create a new page, right? So for designers, um, name your assets properly. And I mean assets, I'm referring to images, components, the developers want to be seeing rectangle, right? A name of a file. So just imagine if I click on this image, you see the name here is image, right? But what if you can call this, a side image, right? Or probably if it's a company, if the company will be the one to upload their own image, you can say, company's image, right? Let's just call that side image. So whenever I see side image, I know that this is, if I'm coding and you gave me, like you exported all the images, when I see side image, I know that you are referring to this particular image. If it's an avatar, tell me that this is an avatar, right? Someone is saying, please, what exactly is Fig Component Library for? Yeah, so the idea is from Fig Component Library, which is a website, I can simply work with some of the, where is my browser? Yeah, I can simply work with some of the, pre-made designs, right? More like templates, right? And I can just, bring that into my environment and, edit this, work with it. It's a very nice way to quickly spin up applications. I use it. I use it a lot. If I want to work on a dashboard, for example, look at this e-commerce. This is an e-commerce implementation. So I can simply create a page and I can say commerce page. I'm going to take that off though. So when I paste this in, you see I have the design, right? I can of course subscribe. You should subscribe if you can, right? Subscribe to the pro version so you get even more assets. You see we have like a table here that I can reuse. If I want to create a table, I can. But yeah, if you're building a custom product where you have like a design system, or you got into the company and they are already working on something with a design system, you will definitely have to work with their design system. This is more like having inspiration, or at least understanding what you want to do. This is a table, right? And of course, you can use this, for inspiration to create yours, or your company's design. So yeah, that's how I use Figma components. Yeah, that's how I use Figma components. So now we have, as I said earlier, the first thing I said was, name your components properly. I'll probably close this as well. So for now, right? So name your components properly, and make sure you have a style guide. If it's a very simple project, So style guide. If it's a massive project, have a design system. If you want to have a design system, your design system should, it's best if your design system is away from your file. So of course, you create a project. I'm sure you know how to create a project, right? So you can first create a team. So if you have a team, then let's see, you have your team. Then within your team, you create your project, and within your project, you have different, different files, right? You have different files. So within that, project, you can create a file for your design system, right? And then you create a file for your main implementation. I don't, I don't advise people to implement or to build a design system alongside the main the main design. Reason being that you don't want to distract front-end developers, right? You don't want to distract them too much. If you work on your design system away from your design, like in a different file, you can you can publish your design system as a library, and access your design system inside your library, right? I'm sure you know how that works. So for example, you can see I have some solutions here that are some designs here that are published, and while I'm inside this place, I can even see some of those published libraries. You can see them, right? I have an accordion, I have like avatars. I can basically work with the avatar. From here I can just bring this in, right? So you see right here, I have an avatar, right? So yeah, but you did not see this whole thing inside my file because definitely my file will become much heavier. I see a lot of people create a lot of files on Figma. You create like let's say you're using the free plan. You have like 3 pages, and that 3 page is filled up with a lot of things, right? I think what you should learn to do is try as much as possible to understand how to publish some of these items and reuse them in other files. But let's say you are still using you have a plan you're on a Figma plan where you can only have 3 files, right? For example, 3. So let's take this off. One thing you can do is to first have a style guide. Then maybe you can have like a rough work. And I mean, I do tell some people you can have a rough work, a rough work page. So this is where you do all your testing, right? You can do all your testing in here. So yeah, I mean, you can do that. But if you don't think you need a rough work whatsoever, you can basically decide to say, okay, I am working on a mobile and web version. I want to have the mobile here and the web here, right? Probably because you don't want to have both here, right? But this would be your, completed, let's say, projects completed. So um, there are ways to actually name your your files. You can use this slash um, item here, and the reason why I'm using this is because I want to kind of like mark this with a tag, right? So I can say we have project completed, and I can call this a project ongoing, right? So which means when the designers get to this file, they are not going to bother themselves with anything they have in the ongoing, because this is where you are designing, right? Then completed is where your designers, where your front-end developers should focus on, right? You don't want a situation where you've told your front-end developer, feel free to visit the page and start, implementation already, only for them to get there the following day and you've made some changes, right? It's going to be a problem. Most people use, some other tools, right? Most people use other tools like Zeppelin. I think I already have it uninstalled. But yeah, I use Zeppelin a lot, especially when I'm doing my design in Sketch or in Vision Studio. I use Zeppelin. Zeppelin is kind of like a better way to manage, design uh, assets, and of course, it's kind of better to do handover, like design handoff, right? But if you're not doing that because you're not, working on a very large scale project and you're using Figma, I would always advise you to ensure that whatever you have in the completed section is not something you edit every single time. Instead, focus on designing here, and whenever you're done and you have added it to this place, it means it has been approved. All right, it means it has been approved. Yeah, then you have your style guide. So I'm not going to say too much about style guide. I need to start coding already, but I'm sure most of you know what a style guide is, right? If you don't know what a style guide is, please try to Google that. Um, you want to implement like your components. So for example, I would prefer to implement this as a component, right? And maybe I want to call that a primary button. Of course, it shouldn't be as big as this, but let's assume you have like your buttons in your style guide. I can call these buttons, right? Of course, my buttons will definitely come in as a group, so I have different buttons. Uh, yeah, most likely. So I have like primary button. This has a border radius of 8. Okay, nice. So I want to make this a component, right? And I want to have a variant of that component, and I want to call this secondary. So basically, the main difference here would be the color, right? I can say maybe my secondary button is black without the outline. So let's take off the stroke, or yeah, let's see. Just keep the stroke as black as well. So I can say this is my secondary. Remember, name your components and its variants very, make sure you name them properly. So you see, this is called button base, but instead, I'm going to call this, buttons, right? And inside here, I'm going to call the first one primary, right? Which of course you can also let's go back. So yeah, you can also do that here. You see, I have the name is default. I can change that to primary here. Okay, I can select the next one and change that to secondary. And why do I have to do it this way? Buttons, primary, secondary. Let me show you. And of course, if you already know how to work with components, you should realize that if I come down to project ongoing, and I prefer to use a component for this rather than having this button here, I can just go down to my assets. I can go down to my local components. You see, it's called desktop one, which is also wrong, right? What you want to do is that you want to call this a style guide or any name that sounds nice, right? Yeah, so your styles, which is your font style, your color style, you can implement all those stuffs here. Your components, you can do that here as well. Your spacing, all those things, just make sure you have them here as a standard. Okay. So if I go back to my design on project ongoing and I check out assets, now you see I have style guide, right? And I can see I have a button. Bringing the button right here. So you see I have primary button. And what else? What else do I want to do? I want to change this to probably secondary. I can change it from here. Right now, you see we have the secondary button, and I can swap that again back to the primary button. Now, you also want to make sure that this item, scales itself. So let's quickly check this, and I think the best way to scale this is not to do it this way, but to fill the container, right? So I fill the width, and now we have this item. So we can simply change this to get started. And yeah, so now we have a component. So we can basically play around with that and create more components and more styles. Um, yeah, if you have any problem working with style guides or working with components, I think on the Figma playlist I created, I also have examples, and I was able to explain how to work with styles, how to work with the auto layout and stuff like that. So yeah, you can learn from that as well. So let's go back to our file. So now we have the project ongoing and the project completed. The front end guys are going to work with this, right? So if you're a front end person on this call, this is where you start your implementation. You might be asking yourself, should I do mobile first or should I do web, desktop first? I personally would say it doesn't really matter. It depends on what you prefer working with, and I think it most times depends on the frameworks you're using. If you find yourself using Tailwind, then I think mobile first is the way to go, right? It's kind of easier to work on the mobile first than kind of like do the opposite for the web, right? It's fairly simple if you're using Tailwind CSS. For me, I usually use pure CSS, so I don't really find it you know like I don't really take it as a big deal, right? So I can work on the desktop and work on this next. Yeah, so I usually start off with implementing a very simple, HTML and CSS layout. So let's go down to my desktop, and I'm going to create a new directory. So let's just call this demo project or feedback project. Okay, I'm going to create my HTML file, CSS file, and maybe main.js file to start, right? I would want to use a framework, but let's just start with this. Yeah, so the next thing I want to do is to start putting in my code, of course, right? Oh yeah, let's use VS Code. That is what we're mostly familiar with. So let's go with VS Code. If you have any question, you can go ahead and ask me. But yeah, I think one major thing you must understand when working with other people on a project is collaboration is key, right? Don't ever feel like you know too much and you don't need advice from anybody. Listen to people as a team, allow others speak, right? You can also speak, but allow others speak as well. Then try to reason with other people, look at it from their own angle, ask them to explain, right? Tell me what you mean, right? When you say we should do it this way, how exactly, what exactly do you mean? Don't sound insulting, right? Sound like you're curious and you want to know, right? So I want to know why you're looking at this from this angle. Let's try to reason from your standpoint. Okay, now can you just look at it from my own angle, right? So now that you're seeing it from my angle and I've also seen it from your angle, which do you think is best for the project, right? In a company, you would want to say which is best for the project and which is also best for the company, right? So which is best for the project, and we can say, okay, let's go with version A, or let's go with your style, or let's go with my pattern. If you're working with a team of developers, what you should ask is which is best for this project, for this code base, right? Marvelous will say, I love using Nuxt. Someone else will say, I love using React. It doesn't matter, right? If you can use Nuxt, you can use Next.js, which is React. If you can use Vue, you can use React. You have not tried to. That's just the difference, right? You can do it, but you've not tried. So you would only sometimes developers will only use something when they are forced to use it, and then they discover it wasn't that hard. I ran away from Java for a very long time since I was in school. I got to Abuja, and my first job there was to work as a Java, software engineer, building mobile apps with Java, and I was able to pick it up in a month, right? And I was building applications, in a month. So the point is, the technology is just a means to an end. The standard, the practice, the process is what matters the most. The team, right? So someone is saying, Mr. Marv, blow our head with front. Yeah, the session is being recorded. Please, let's proceed. So I'm simply going to put in, my boilerplate, and let's bring in the link. So REL style sheets, right? Right, and the name of our file is main.css. Okay, so we're just going to call this the feedback project. So let's go ahead to start off, with our implementation. So one thing I want to show you, especially for the front end guys here, I want you to understand that you should try to understand to look at process more, right? Some people will say, okay, I want to implement this. Let me do this and see if it's showing first, or let me do this and see if it's showing first. If you understand your screen, sir, what's wrong with my screen? Oh, it's too small. Okay. Joe String, is it better now? Okay. Yeah, I hope this is better now. All right, so I hope you can see my screen, guys. So if I want to implement this, I would try as much as possible to to look at this from understanding what the layout looks like, right? Front end guys, first of all, always try as much as you can to look at layouts, positions, right? So understand layout, understand positions, understand there's something we call Z index, which is what should be on top of what, right? So or what should be behind what. Try to understand how it works properly. And this is not something I should be telling you to learn, but I'm saying it because a lot of developers, tend to lose, their designs. I mean, it's on the page, but you can't find it. That's a very big problem. You spend a lot of time, not knowing the location of a specific item. Yeah, so please just check them out. Layout is very important, right? And if you understand uh, things like flex, grid, right, and even tables, but I think tables is no longer, yeah, flex and grid is fine. Understand how it works, but yeah, if you can learn tables, which I will not put under layout because we no longer use it for layout, but yeah, learn how to use tables because if you're building dashboards, you need to understand tables very well as well. So yeah, I think these are kind of the most important things I can tell you to learn right now. What else? What else am I going to ask you to learn? Um, the box system. I think you already know that, right? I'm sure you already know this thing you're seeing here. So I'm not going to be so detailed about this, right? but you already know that. So the margin, border, padding, just try to understand some of those things, and even designers too. Please always take note of those things, right? The box model. So try to understand, margins, padding. A padding can be a margin. It depends on the position and what exactly you are referring to, right? So if I draw, if you see something like this, if you see this item, the space that you have outside it, from here down to this point, is what we will refer to as. Let me use the inspect. So can you see this? If you can see this very well, you see I have 24px. All I would do is to say, okay, on H1, if I use H1 for this, and I use a margin bottom 24px, I'm referring to the margin of H1, right? Now, what about the space you have inside that H1, right? That is the padding. So the space you have inside here, I would refer to that as a padding. But I will refer to that as a padding if it's mostly like an element that I want to add space into. Yeah, because sometimes you can't refer to the space here as a padding. This is instead a line height, okay? This is a line height. So if you want more, if you want to learn more about these things, margin, padding, just I think it's better if you let me know, what you want to learn, and I would know how best to, come up with something for you. So understand how to work with borders, margin, padding, and yeah, box model. All right, so let's jump back. Content guys are tired and they are saying, Marv is explaining too much. So I want to start implementing this. So let me just move straight into my code. So looking at my layout, I have two main sections, 1, 2. I'm going to have the very first cover there. I'm going to call that main, and I'm then going to have div. The first guy, second guy. I'm going to work with a direct style first, right? So and I'm going to use main, but I'm also going to bring in I like working with roots, and yeah. So let's have my universal selector. So this is where I do things like box sizing, a box, and I'm going to also have a margin 0 and padding of 0. Okay, for all my elements, I don't want them to have like a margin of padding that I don't understand. All right. So what else do I need to do here? So let's look at the root. So here I want to add things like my color, right? So I'm going to have primary, right? And here I can put my primary color. I don't have that for now. So let's also have secondary. Secondary. Okay. And I'm also going to have border, right? I like, border radius. I like to repeat some of these things. What else do I need here? So things like, font family. Most times I would want to say I need my H1 font family should be separate from my, body font family. So body font family. We can also use this to set light and dark theme, right? So, but let's not dive into that. Yeah. So this is okay. Then main, I'm just going to say I have a main of let's say my width should be. Let's take a look at this. So this is actually filled, 100%, right? So which should be 100%. But on mobile, you see on mobile it's not really filled. So on mobile, I just want to have like maybe 95%. So I'm going to say as media query max width. Let's just use 1000px because I want it to cover both tablets and the mobile screen. On mobile screen, you probably want to say 768, right? Px. I love using 1K px because it will cover both mobile and tablet views, especially 7-inch tablet views. So I can simply go ahead and dump this in here with the 95%, right? And I want to definitely say margin 0 auto so that everything can sit in the center properly. And now you're seeing I'm not even writing code here. I'm not even previewing it yet. And I'm not going to preview it until we are ready to say, okay, we trust our guts and we're good to go. So on this side, we have an image. So I'm just going to say we have an image. I'm going to just simply call this left, which is not compulsory. I can do main. So I can simply choose to say I want to use something else. Let's move this out first. We'll get back to this. Let's dump this in here, right? Save. So instead of using left just like this, I can simply say I need like main, and I want to point to like the end child, right? So I can use that, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to say we have the left, which would contain our image, right? And I'm also going to say, since the main is the main is a kind of like the parent container there, I'm going to also have a main with display of grid, or I can say flex, and I can say flex wrap wrap. But let's just ignore the wrap for now. Justify content, um, space between, and I am simply now. This is going to. I'm going to show you one major problem you will have, especially when you try to use the justify content thing, and you also have you also have like main div, you have like a flex basis. So most people don't like using this, flex option. Instead, they prefer to work with a grid, right? And then they just use like, the grid fill thing. But let me show you what happens here. So if I put in the image, img, rc, of course I have alt, I can just call this side image. Okay, so on this side, I'm just going to bring in the image. So I need to create my assets. Within the asset, I can simply put in, CSS. Always remember to structure things well. I've taught you how to structure this already, JS. So let's move this guy in here, move this guy in here. Now HTML file, fix it, assets, CSS, in.css, okay? And we also have images, the assets. So I don't have that image here for now. So let's go to Figma, click on this, go to design, and export. 1x is fine. Put this on my desktop. I'm just going to put this on my desktop. So if you see what is going on here, it's not really asking us to put in a specific name. The reason for that is because based on the way I saved this project slash, if I come to my desktop, you are now going to see that we have, let's see, we have a folder called projects, and we have this, right? So you see the item is saved in that folder, which is proper, right? It's not just saved on the desktop directly. Maybe that's something you want. I believe that is something you might want. Let's just move this into images, and yeah, so now we have the image in here, which we call the site image.png. And right, I can just go ahead to say we have assets, images, site image.png. For my image, I want the image item to fill without being too big or too small. Now, what I usually do when I create left is I usually would say position relative. And the reason for that, I mean, which is not even very compulsory, but just in case you are now working with an image that might be too big or too small, it tends to scale itself. But you don't need to specifically select a size. Instead, what you can do right now is to take this whole guy and you say left image, right, just like this. And now you can simply say I want a width of 100% and a height of 100%. And now this is going to fit in perfectly. But one more thing is our main, we did not set like a width in here. We already have width, and I think we already have the width in the other section, I believe so. But I'm just going to set a width here of a width of 100% and a height of 100 VH. I'll tell you why I'm using the VH. I want it to be on a single page without anybody having to scroll. But sometimes you might also have to scroll, and you probably don't want to use VH, but we'll get to that. So let's just take a look at what we have right now, just to see what it looks like. So I'm going to say open index.html. Come on. Okay. Right. So now you see we have our image, sitting perfectly on this screen, right? Let's go back, close this. Okay. So now in the second div, which of course you can also call right, I will probably not, do this because I know how to use the end child thing, to fix all this stuff, right? So I just want to go ahead and, dump in some of the items I see here without necessarily styling them yet, right? So I'm going to use H1. I'm going to use a p tag for this. But let's zoom in again to see what we have here. So first of all, I'm sure you already know that we have a form. Even though someone is not going to tell you that you have a form, this is a form, obviously. So it's best to use a form, right? So let's go ahead back to our design. I'm just going to say we have a form. and we want to have when you submit, can be on submit, on click, those kind of stuff. I want to call a function. You don't have a function yet, so I'm just going to take this off for now. We'll get back to that. Now, looking at this form, we have I love to put in love to put in all those details into the form. Reason for doing this is because I want the form to be able to contain the styling for the form heading, the form subheading if there is one, right? So I first call this a form heading because it is going to contain both this guy and this guy, right? And then I'm going to say h1. I don't necessarily need to use a style of title whatsoever. I'm going to also have a P, but they would have their own custom styling. Let's just copy some of these items, Control C, Control V, Control A, Control C, Control V. But I have a span in here, and I'll tell you why I'm doing that. Yeah, tell you why I am doing that. So, okay, yeah, so we have a span just like this. All right, so let's take a look at this. What exactly do we need? Again, first of all, we need spacing, right? So we need some spacing. You can see we need some spacing. So how do we define our spacing? Do we make spacing, manual all the time? What you might want to do is to automate your spacing, which is something Tailwind would give to you, right? I usually create something myself. I call that utility.css, where I have things like and if you have worked with me before, I have MB1, and I say this is a margin bottom 10 px. So I believe that the designers should be able to have a standard spacing, right? Whether it's 24 px, 48 px, you have standard spacing that you use all the time, and your spacing should not be random, right? So which is why I do things like this. I usually have like 5 steps. So MB1, MB2, MB3, MB4, MB5. So Bootstrap would give you something like this. Tailwind gives you something like this. But if you're working with your own styling and your own design systems, then you should be able to give yourself something like this. So 30, 40, 50. And in most cases, you want to stick to measurement with ROEM rather than PX. We have tools you can use for those kind of conversions, right? Always try to also drop comments, right? Margin bottom. So I would say we have my margins. And first of all, we have margin bottom, right? And next we probably have margin top, because those are my priority for now. So I also do the same thing for padding, right? I do the same thing for padding. So I can come down here, I can do the MT5 with margin top. So I'm simply going to copy this, paste, T, paste, T, paste. Yeah, another great idea is you can actually use SAS, right? I know most of us might not know how to use it, but it's also a very fun, way to write your style. So we can basically write a loop that would automatically, generate this for us without having to do it manually. Yeah. So when I'm done with this is my margin top, margin bottom. I will then go ahead to also create my paddings, right, inside the same place here. But let's leave the margin for now, so we don't waste too much time. Within my main.css, I would then import. Always remember, importing comes first, right? So let's import this, and I'll just point to the utility.css. If I'm using any kind of external font, I would also go ahead and import that, and I would call it fonts.css. So if I have this here, I'm going to say fonts.css. And within this place, I can simply use Google Fonts. So I want to see the font we're using here. This is Inter, right? Is it Inter for every single thing? Yes, it is. So let's go ahead and search for Inter. Import that. Okay. So right now I have Inter imported in here. SCSS would be best for utilities. It's very correct. So this is my font, and I just have to come down to body, and I want to say font family. Now I want to show you something. So when I say font family, I might want to say, okay, let's put in Inter, and let's put in sans serif, just in case Inter is not found. But instead, I'm going to take this away from here, and I'm going to rather put that inside the root. So H1 font family is this, and this is also, yeah. So since we have seen that we're using the same font family everywhere, let's just use, font family, right? So right here, I can say var font family. All right, so now we're using variables now, which makes sense. What about our font size, right? Font size. So for our font size, I think we're going to have a base font size, which I would just say is probably 14px, right? So we're going to have a base font size. Our primary color, let's pick that as well. This is our primary color right here. So let's verify if it's the same thing. Let's copy that. It's in here, not background. I just want the color itself. So take this off. Take this off. Okay, so we don't really have a secondary color, but I'm just going to select. I'm just going to use black, right? Maybe not pure black, but the one I selected in that style guide. So let's go down and first of all, probably you have to change this. So let's go to design. Let's use something around this color. Okay. I'm just going to use the same color here as this. Okay. So these are our secondary color. And, our main text, of course, has to be, our primary color by default is black. We're not going to change that. But if you probably want to change that, try to make it standard here. Our border radius is 8px. We checked that already. Let's go back and see 8px, right? If I check out the completed as well and I check the input field, is also 8px. So it's standard. If you have a different input border radius from, buttons and the cards, you can specify to say input border radius as a variable and normal or standard border radius, so that you always stick to what you have in your variable. Now we have this simple stuff right here, and also here we have this text. We already imported utility, so I can simply say class equals nb1, which is margin bottom one. And if we save this and try to see what we have in our browser, remember I told you something earlier. I said one major problem. Oh yeah, so as you can see, the font is not working yet. So let's go back again and see what went wrong. We actually brought in the fonts.css, right? Did we? Yes, we did. So we brought in the fonts.css. We imported this font. This is inter. And right here, we also said we have inter. Are we making a mistake? So let's check it out if we're making a mistake. Okay, not yet. So font family. What is, so did I make a mistake here? Is it a single hyphen or, no, I think it was actually correct. Yeah, it's double. So let's see where we're making that mistake. So we have root, we have the body, and we say we're using font family of this, right? So I think maybe what we could do is check. Let's see what went wrong. Something is wrong here with our fonts. Let's fix that. Okay, so I think we are having a problem with this our roots section here. So we have font family. Okay, let me just go ahead and import this whole thing in here. Let me just verify what the problem might be. So let's refresh. If that works, it still doesn't work. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that still doesn't work. We are unable to use inter, and I think the major issue with this would be our fonts not working. So inter, what is wrong? What is wrong? What is wrong? Let me try to do this again. I'm going to bring in H1. That's what I'm using there. I'm going to paste in the full the entire font family, and just to make sure this this style still works. So we have inter. Let me use something I have on my laptop. I think I have what font do I have on my laptop? Let me use sans serif. Okay, so that works. It means the problem is coming from the font I brought in. Okay, so obviously The problem is coming from the font that I brought in, so let's resolve that. If enter doesn't work, all right, forgot to put my comma. Apologies, guys. Is that a problem now? If we have our body using sans serif. All right, yeah, that was a problem. Okay, so the comma, I missed that. Okay, so let's proceed back to our index HTML. And as you can see, I use the MB1, right, margin bottom 1. If I take that off, you see that guy is closer, right? So I can of course use MB2 as well. And I think the next thing you'll be thinking of right now is, okay, how about our size, right? The size of the text and all that. So let's go back to Figma, and let's begin to take a look at some of the things around spacing, right? Instead of setting a space between this and this, I would rather set a space, for my main form first, right? So sometimes designers would not. Oh yeah, thank you, Alawiye. So sometimes designers would probably make some kind of mistakes. In my form, I will always prefer to have a padding, right, in my form. Let's go ahead and create a new style, form.css, not CS, that's C sharp, CSS. Okay, so I have my form, and I have a padding, select the padding. Always ask your designers what should be the padding of your form. The base padding of your form. Maybe on a mobile view, you can have a different, padding, right? Maybe this. Let's see. Okay. So let's see what we have here. So now you see we're going to first bring in that padding of 30 px, and remember we need to bring this in here as well at imports URL. Let's take this off. Take this off. Okay. But CSS save. Okay, so let's try that again. So we have that padding, right? And even with the padding, you can still say you want to proceed with the gap. Remember, we created something here, so we can have a gap. If I put 20 px in the gap here and I save, right? So now we have that gap. Let me use 30. Okay, so you don't want to be, making random guesses, right? You probably want to, come down to Figma and try to see, the gap. The reason why I will not, work with this is because when I select this item, you see that, we can't assume this to be our gap. If this is the gap, it means that our form does not have any padding, right? If that is what you want to do. So you can't really make that kind of assumption. You always need to ask your designers this question. If you are saying there's a gap of 104 px here, it means we don't have a padding. What is the padding of our form, right? Ask your designers. If they say your form does not have padding, then of course it means they have made the decision for your form not to have any padding, right? And always ask them for a style that you can follow for your spacing. You don't want to have 24 px here. At this point you have what do you have here? 48 px, right? This is standard because designers did a good job, right? 24, 48, that's how you measure these stuffs. And if you look at what you have in between here, let's see, you see this is 24. I mean, most of you might not really, notice the importance of this, right? You see the way it is, clear, 24 px in between, right? 24 px. And let's look at this. This is 32 because what stays together should always, what you have that should be together should stay together. What is separate has to be separate. Now, what is closely related but is not exactly part of the form items, which is this submit button. We want to have a space here because this guy differentiated these items from this. Even though this is the trigger or this is the action, I will definitely use 32 or I will use 48. Now we basically use you can basically do your measurements in fours or eights, right? So which means that by the time you add 24 plus 4 plus 4, at some point you definitely get to 48 or 32. Do the math very well. You see that that is very very correct. So try as much as possible to work with the multiples of 4 or 8, right? I would prefer you just stick to the multiples of 4, right? Which is of course the same thing depending on how much spacing you want. So let us go ahead and work on our size. Uh, don't ever come here and pick everything. I have seen this a lot. It's not good, right? It doesn't work that way. Don't just say this is my H1 which means I can simply, put the entire style in my H1. Please don't do that. So for this, I'm going to say this is going to be my form H1, which is probably my title. I'm going to paste this. I'm going to start picking up some of these things here, right? Letter spacing, if that is needed, you can keep it. Line height, I don't really need line height. I want to have a standard line height across my design, okay? Font size, I want to have a standard font size across my design. So I'm going to assume that, my font size down to font family, right? I don't want height, I don't want width. I'm just going to keep the font, the spacing. In my main.css, this is where I put my standards, right? So first of all, I have H1, H2, H3, H4, down to H5 and H6. And I also have my P, label, span, right? So in here, I'm going to put this stuff, but not with the font size, of course. So they're going to have equal, font weights. Now, H1 itself has this, right? 48 pixel. And, they are all working with this same font family. So, of course, remember, we have to use a variable font family like this, right? And then this guy, of course, has the same font family. You don't need to repeat. You don't need to repeat all these things, right? But I'm doing this because at some point your designer might say our body font has changed from our main font, and all you have to do is replace these items, right? So I'm just trying to be proactive here, even though I know that when you're working on a large project, don't come up with these assumptions. This is a tiny project, which is why I'm doing this. On a large project with a big team, you don't want to have redundant code everywhere, right? So if your designer is saying you have two main fonts or three main fonts, make sure you outline them properly in the root section and use them accordingly. Okay. So my H1 has this size. I don't have any specific size for H2 yet. So let's just leave it this way. So one thing, let's take a look at this, right? Take a look at this. You see, within the heading that we created, right, inside our form, you would have spotted that something was different. So heading. So our P in the heading has a different color. So we have a different color, right? Let's do that. And of course, our span also has a different color. So let's take a look at the span color, which is right here. Okay. One major thing that you would also want to do is to make sure that you have, pretty much a standard size, right? What is the standard size? Your standard, size here would be font size of 14px. That can also cover the A, right? And probably you have a specific size for your A, a specific color. I mean, for A, you can of course specify that as well. So it can be a color of, I would always start by saying all on sets. And then I would go ahead to say, what else? What else? Yeah, color of primary. Remember, font size should be var font size, right? So let's verify if that is the font size they're using here. So this is a font size of 14. That's correct. Okay. So, and we have the color right now. Then, of course, cursor. When you hover on that item, you want it to have a pointer. Okay, let's leave that for now. Back to the form. We have been able to style this. So if I go back to our browser and I refresh, let's just see what we have. You see, this is actually taking up the color we want, but this guy is not taking up the color yet, right? Let's figure out why. Okay, so back to the form, you have, the span, right? And now it should be the P first before the span. Remember very well, that was what we did. So if I refresh this now, you see we have that color right there. Okay, so back to Figma. And yeah, for our spacing, I set 10px, in between, which is different from what we've seen there, right? What we have seen there is that we have a standard spacing, right? So in our standard spacing, I probably want to make sure I work with that standard spacing. So M1 should give me, let's just start with, let's see, let's start with 16, right? 8 plus 8, I'm working with 16. M2, let's work with 24. Then I'm going to also have M4 because I want that to be 48, right? But remember, we have 32, right? We have 32. I remember we have 32. So let's do 32 and let's do 48, right? Then, 48, I'm simply going to say I have 56 here for M5. So a lot of things have, changed here. And of course, we have to also, do the same thing for the others, right? So we have 16, 24, 32. So 16, 24, 32, and 48 and 56. Okay, so let's save this back to our index page, go back to our browser and refresh to see what we have. Now on our index page, we definitely have to use M2 because that is 24 based on what we have seen. It's actually M2. Now we have to put in these items, this is a label, this is an input field, right? So label, input field, label, input field. This is together. Take a look at this, together, 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 just like that. So let us come back in here. And right now that we have added the heading, we can proceed to add a div. And I will just call this the form control. Form control, because I want that to be the base styling of each item that has that is comprised of a label and an input field of type text, right? Or any other input field. I can say placeholder. Looking at what we have here is EG marvelous, right? And the first name, this is our first name. And always try to make sure you say for first name, right? And how do you tag the first name here? You work with, ID equals first name and name equals first name. Now, you might be saying these things are not very important, but they are very important, trust me. So make sure you do that. Our form control, I will style that inside the form of form control. And I will also just make this a display of grid. By default, it's a block, and that's fine. But I just want to make this a grid because I want to have a standard space in between. As you can see, 6, right? So I can say gap, just give me 6px right here. This color, I don't want to do this. Instead, it has to be var primary. Okay. What else? What else do I need to change? I need to change this, but this is kind of like very specific. So yeah, so I can also choose to use form padding, but this is just a once in a while it's just a one-off thing, so I'm going to leave it here. But the color is the only thing I would change. So now we have our form control and we have that space in between the form control. So next thing is to style the form control itself, right? So I'm going to simply say I want to style the form inputs. Of course, you do the input type. If I'm not making a mistake, this is correct. But if I'm making a mistake, let me know in the chat. I usually make mistakes. I usually make mistakes a lot here. Input type. Okay, okay. All right. So I want to verify. Alawiye, please let me know if this is correct. I'll wait for you in the chat. You can do some Google search from your end. And I want to add more items like the input type, text, password. What else? Number. So just put it on the chat there with a comma. All right. So I want to have everything together in one place while I am styling this. So I'm going to pick this style, but I'm going to delete some of these things. It's too much and I don't need them all. I'm going to take off these guys, take them off. I need the box shadow. Border radius is fine. I just have to say var border radius, right? The box shadow is fine. Border is fine. Solid. Okay. Background is white, so that's pretty much standard. Take this off. Take this off. So yeah, let's keep the height. Take off the width. Forget the gap. Or we can keep the padding and take off the the height. So take this off, take this off, take this off. What else are we taking out here? This is fine. Let's format this. Configure this CSS language feature, save. Okay, so Alawiye, I'm waiting for the response if you can hear me. So now this is what we have. Our border radius did not work. So let's go back again. Border radius. I said var border radius. Okay, so that did not work. Okay, border radius. I was thinking we have the border radius in here. Did I make a mistake? Border radius. Okay. Get save. All right. So now that works. First name. So you see, we need some space, right? We need some space here. You can reach us anytime. Blah blah blah. So let's check out our design. we have some space here, and this is what 48 pixels, which is MB4, right? So let's go ahead and make sure inside our index.html file, all we have to do is to make sure that we have the MB4 right here, which is margin bottom 4, and that space will be added automatically. And now we have this. So let's go ahead and also make sure that at the end of every group item we have 24, right? You can see that we have 24. So let's just go ahead and say MB2, copy this, paste 1, 2, 3, right? Save. So let's change some things. Last name, right? Copy the last name. Okay. We'll bring out this shortcut tool so that you guys can see some of the shortcuts I'm using. Is it working? Okay. All right. So this is the last name, and I think the other thing there was email, right? So let's do email. So Control C, Control C, Control V, Control V. What else? Email right here, and of course the type. I have not specified. Oh yeah, type is text. Type here should be email. Email. Okay, now when I save this, of course, the email is not going to work because I've not really specified what I want there. So let's also go ahead back into form and specify this properly at this point. So I want yeah, Alawi, what I was asking is I want to add more types. So I don't know if this works, but let's try that. So email, of course, this as well for password. I believe there should be a better way to have everything. Oh, okay. All right, so now we have this item. One last thing there is, I guess that should be, yeah, this. Okay, so let's see what we have. This is, I'm going to use text area, of course. So let's go back and, also style our text area. So paste this, Control V. Take off the height. We want to stick to padding and not height. Take this off as well. And let's just style our text area. Okay, so style our text area. I want to set I think it's line, max line maybe, 58. I can't really tell if it's line max line again, but I'm going to test that. I don't think it's height, but I'm going to try it. So let's go back into our index page, and let's select a new item. This time around, even with the form control, we want to call that feedback message. And tell us a little bit about the experience. Now, this is a text area. Text area. I think that's going like that. I will have to verify anyways. All right, so you see the text itself, that did not work for the text itself. So, and the height as well is not valid. So my styling here is wrong. Let's try the height. Let's try if it's the height. If it's a height property that we have to use, even though oh yeah, okay. So let's check out our style on Figma. Let's see the height here. So this height is 128 pixels, so 128 pixels. And we also have the color. So we need to specifically, put in the font style here. But instead of doing that, I want to just go straight into the main and set my standard, font family right here. Let's take it up from here for now. So, and yeah, if I do that, it's going to work with the font. But there's a little bit of a difference. A placeholder. And this is not referred to as a placeholder. So let me quickly open up Google and type in text area placeholder. As you can see, it's also affecting what I have here. The height is affecting what I have here. So I have to be very specific on that. This is also the same error that some of you might have had. You see what I'm saying here. So you want to set, kind of like a maximum limit. So let's go to text area max height and width. So let's see. All right. So this is what we have: text area ID, blah blah blah, rows and columns, then max length. Okay, let's pick that. And this plugin is called Grepper. And okay, this is Stack Overflow. But I think this is coming from Grepper, of course. I have a plugin called Grepper. So I use that and I love it. So you can try it out. It's a Chrome extension. So back to form. And what going to text area? I am going to first go in here and yeah, set this. I'm not going to stop here. I want to also see how to uh, do this in CSS. Style. Come on. Okay, so let's click on one of these. I was hoping Greppa would do that. If you have ChatGPT or yeah, GPT Playground, that is probably better. So okay, we use max height, resize vertical, which means it can only resize vertical. I'm going to set to none. I don't want it to resize itself, so let's go ahead and set resize to none. All right. Yeah. So let's take off the height thing there. So back to our browser, refresh. So now you see it's pretty much better this way. But for the style, the font, the text inside, yeah, let's just check out, what is the best way to set the text, right? So I'm going to say text area, placeholder, color. So because it's not a placeholder, right? So probably we want to specifically set the padding, right, inside the text area. But I just want to verify that, just to make sure that we're doing it the right way. So we have the place. Okay, so it says placeholder. What else do we have here? Okay, so let's see. Let's see. For the padding, we have 14px, 10 on top and 14 on the side. So let's just come in here and we're going to say we have a padding of 14px and 10px. So save that and check it out on the browser, see what we have, right? Of course, don't forget the color. So the color is pretty much the color that we already added here. Where is it? Okay, sorry, let me check this out again. So we have a standard color. Okay, so now there's a problem, and the problem is that we are using this P color you're seeing here is kind of entering the whole thing, even though that is not something we want exactly. So what you can do is for the text area, you want to say, yeah, let me see if I can just use the same color, if that works. Okay. All right. So I'm using this color. That is not the color that I have here. They're totally different. So I want to make sure I pick the color from the design. Let's select that. Copy. Not the background. Not the background. Not the background. But the fonts. Yeah. Color. Okay. So I think it's actually the same thing. It's actually the same thing. Okay. Okay. So that's fine. If you take a look at this, we have a standard font weight for all our style. I probably did not add that. That should, for all our type here, right? P, label, span, and A. We have a standard, let me see the label. The label has 500, so they are different, right? So let's try to fix that. Our P probably has this font weight. Our label has a different font weight. So please, let's make sure that works. So now we have 500, and I think that is all. So that's all we need to do here. The other thing we need to do is to verify that you're not having this additional space right here. And the additional space is definitely coming as a result of the padding. I am very sure. But we can resolve that. So let's check it out first to see where that is coming from. So let's inspect. All right, so it's coming from the padding, as I said earlier. Let me go down to our main, our index file here, and that style we created with this, refresh. Now this actually does work, but it's too long, right? So let's probably say we have 100% our height. Are we missing again? Okay, so I probably want to align the item to have it to the center, right? You can see we need to align this to the center, it has to properly be in the center. I am not very comfortable, having this item look so long. But yeah, it's looking so long, and that is not very good. So you need to have like a fixed way to say, okay, I don't want this to exceed, my 100% for the height, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're doing things, the right way. So you see that now I remove the gap, and you see that we no longer have that, this item get to the end. And the only problem that we have here, we just need to resolve that. So let's go ahead and fix that. By the way, I noticed I forgot something. I'm going to call this column gap, right? Correct. Okay. All right. And I am also going to put our button. Yeah, our button. So we have a button that we can now go back to fix, this item here, right? Which is our image thing. Let me see why we're having that. Yeah, let's keep that. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the button. So to add our button, I'm just going to use the same form control thing here. Okay, so of course our button does not have this label, and we also have the MB2 thing here. But let's first put our inputs type, submit, right, and then we have the value of back to our design. So what do we have here? Get started. Okay, so let's go back and put in the get started. Now remember that will not appear automatically, right? Someone said no quotes. Hope I did not make any mistake there. Okay, okay. So get started. But now the input is not going to work for us, right? And it's not going to work for one major reason. We have not added a specific style for inputs, so we have to say input for submit, input type. Oh, okay. Is that what you're talking about? Oh, okay. Wow, but that actually works. I'll take it off since yeah, I believe that is probably the right way. But it also works. So let's take it off. Thank you. All right. So now we have the submits, and I'm simply going to style that with background. Our background color. Let's just background color, and I'm going to use the primary, right? Var primary. What else do we have here? So we have the border radius. I'm also going to use the var border radius. Okay, so let's check that out to see what we have. Okay, so this is what we have. So we need that padding as well, of course. So let's just go ahead and say border none first, none. Drop this in here, and of course, color of white, if I'm not mistaken. Let's try that now and see what we have. Okay, so we have get started. Remember that the space in between is bigger, and I think I'm skipping something. This guy, right? We have a checkbox, and we have you agree to our friendly privacy policy. Let's copy that. So let's go back into the HTML file, and yeah, we're going to use something similar to this. Let's paste this first. Copy this, paste. Have this from here. Regular text. So let's use regular P was a span. So paste, privacy policy, span, paste. That particular stuff has an underline. So let's go back to form, and within the form, I'm going to say the span within that form. So I can simply add a class, by the way. So let's just go back to index HTML, and I'll just say class underline, right? Underline. Let's copy this, and you can choose to put that in the main just in case you want to use that somewhere else, or maybe in the utility because it's not something you use all the time though. So yeah, let's just have underline. I'll say text decoration underline. Save. See what that looks like. Okay, so we have the underline here, right here. Remember that it's a span as well, which means when you have a P with the A right inside our form at any point in time, based on what we have seen, we want it to, yeah, we pretty much wanted to have this, but this time around it's not within the heading, right? Remember, it is not within that heading. So if we do this, we should have the the color Okay, so that color did not show up. Figure out why. So if we have a P at any point in time with the span directly inside, then we should have it look this way. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and also remember that we don't have the label. Instead, what we have is uh, an input type checkbox, right? So checkbox. Yeah, and you probably want to give it an ID, maybe I agree or something. So let's just say privacy policy, right? Let's just leave it that way. So for the checkbox, if we refresh this, you see it is just on top of this. You don't want that. So what we want instead is to probably use a different style here. And what can we call this style? Well, we can call this style a flex, right? So we can create a style of flex, or we can say flex wrap because we want it to wrap if possible. So inside the form, and it has to be inside the form because it's specific to the form. So let's come down here and do this. I'm going to say display of flex wrap, just in case you get to the point where you have to wrap. Now remember one thing, what are we missing here? Okay, so that did not work. I said display flex wrap. Um, let's check back what we have here. What is wrong? Oh, remember this is giving us a grid. That is the problem. So take it off, save, try that again. All right, so we need a gap. Back here, let's add a gap. And we can go ahead to follow the gap we have from here. So let's verify what gap do we have. That is 12px. Save that. Go back again, refresh. We have that gap. And then we have the space right at the bottom. Okay, now this is not working the way we want it to work, the image, and we want to verify what is wrong. So let's see. If I select this item, it's not working because it has passed the 100 VH thing, right? It always happens that way. So 100 VH is definitely not the right way or the right thing to do for that. Yeah, so I think I can fix that from here, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, save that. So this is going to fill, and this is our form, right? Which does not look bad to me. Maybe we can add more space on top here. So all we need to do to add more space is, of course, that is quite easy, right? So we'll just add a class and we put like empty3, which is 36px. Save that, and you see you have that space. So perfect. Now we have this item for our image. You want to style your image whenever you work with an image. Always remember that it is better to have your image work with the object fit property of cover, except for some reasons you don't want it to be, cover. The reason for that is so that images will not stretch. Okay. So what about the mobile view? First of all, this is going to it's not going to look good on mobile yet because we did not really, wrap anything. So as you can see, this is not looking very good, and we did not set specific styling to, some of these things here. So in order to make this, fly on mobile, I'm going to say flex wrap first of all. Wrap, not no wrap, let's wrap. Okay. So if I save this, we're going to have the entire item move down to the bottom. All right, for a start. And remember, for the image itself, we don't want the entire, left thing to even be on our mobile view. That's something you probably don't want at all. So looking at our UI, so I'm going to say at media, max width. Let me also use the same. I don't want to create more than one media query in your own scenario or your own use case, depending on how many layout or how many options your designer created. Make sure you follow the specifications, right? So display, I'm going to say none. So let's save that. Refresh this page. So now the entire left will be gone, right? And now this is what we have. So if you take a good look at this, you'll discover one thing. It is not filling the page properly. So let's go down to form, and let's just style our form to give us a width of 100%. Okay, save that, refresh. Let's see what we have now. First of all, the form is probably, oh no, okay. So we have that, this is right. And right has a flex basis of 50%. I remember. So it's affected by the div, right? It's affected by the div. So what you want to do is that on a mobile view, your main div should not have that. Yeah, your main div should not have this, your flex basis, right, of 50%. And I think there are better ways to actually do this, especially if I'm using a grid. But I'm just going to leave this on mobile view. This is what I have, and I also want to make sure that the size of my H1 is 35px. If I remember clearly, that was what I used here. So let me select that and see what we have, 35px. So I'm going to simply say the same style, right? Back to my form, the same style for my H1, right? Not here. Where did I search the? Oh yeah. So my H1 styling, I put that in the main because I want that to be a standard, right? If you remember, I wanted it to be a standard. So this is it. So I can choose to say I have a mobile option for all these units right here. So I can simply say this is 35px. There's nothing stopping you from making these items variables, okay? You can make them variables. Refresh this should be smaller. Now we have our mobile view. If I take this off, you're going to see something wrong. Exactly what I wanted to show you. And this is wrong for one major reason. Remember, we set 50% in the style we have on the home page here. So this is the problem right now. Flex basis, right? And this is where most people tend to ask me, okay, so how do we resolve this? Because if we want it to be like, on both sides, what is actually causing the problem? The first thing that you would discover that is, causing the problem is the gap, right? The gap was causing a big problem when it was right there, because the gap itself is, in a way, not working as expected with the flex basis, right? So what would be the best thing to do? If we're using one, let's see, it's still not going to work. So 50% is pretty much the standard thing to do alongside, if we're using flex, right? Alongside, ensuring you have, space between, right? That is working proper. What I do most times is I use a grid, right? How can we use a grid to also achieve the same thing? I will show you. So if I'm using a grid, this is what I'm going to do. Just watch. I'm going to say display grid. I'm sure there's also a better way to fix that with Flex. You can check. So display grid, I'm going to say grid template columns. I'm simply going to say repeats, auto fits, right? Auto fill, let's use auto fill, 300px, 1f arrow. This has to be in my min max. Okay. I'm going to then have my gap of 30px. So right here, I don't need this. Refresh this, so what we have. So now you see the first thing we're having here is not getting, it's not getting to the end as we want it to, right? We only have 2 items, and I said auto fill. If I try auto fit, what do we get? Let's refresh. Now this is filled, right? Properly, right? What if we get to the mobile view? What then happens? Let's go to our mobile view. Let's load this well. You see our mobile view works perfectly, right? With a grid. So a lot of people say I prefer Flex because grid is kind of old-fashioned. But you discover that when you use a grid, sometimes it even makes your implementation easier and better. Right now, I just took that off because it's no longer necessary, right? And our code works perfectly. So, of course, this almost took us 2 hours instead of 1 hour. I just wanted to make sure we finish the front end in tomorrow's session. We have a session in the evening, right? In the evening session, we're going to migrate this to Vue, Nox specifically, but I'll show you Nox is actually kind of faster and better. It gives you a bunch of, additions. But if you're using Vue 3, Vue 2, or your regular, the Vue framework without any meta framework like Nox, it's still the same thing at the end of the day. It's not a big deal. I will show you how to migrate it to Vue or Nox, and then we'll create an API for this. Remember, we said that when people want to submit this, we want them to navigate to a specific URL like feedback.com/postclick or /topuniverse or /betacopper. And then when you submit something, it should save on the backend based on the company's address. Okay, so we will do that. And I hope to see you early by 8 because we only have 1 hour to spend in the evening, 8 to 9. Then by tomorrow we'll finish up. We'll have another session like this, 12 to 1. or probably 2, and then we'll also have a session by 8 in the evening. So remember, I made mention of some things. If you need some of those resources as a designer, remember to let me know in my DM on Discord. And that will be all for this session today. If you have any question, I'll be right on Discord. Have a wonderful day. Bye.